In this world, there is a shining past and a fading present, and a future that is covered in ashes. And under the blowing of the cold wind, one could watch the end of one's tragic dream. All of this was happening with the Knights of the Round Table, but it better not happen in real life. Of course, there was also a strong, noble king there who could easily control the past and the future. The king seemed like scattered sand, or perhaps only a dream or a vision. Being in this tragic dream, one could see everything, feeling the cold gusts of wind. The main thing was not to miss your chance and make things different. Rintarou was alone enjoying reading a book about the great adventures of King Arthur. The exciting moment when Arthur pulled the sword from the stone anvil gave a pleasant feeling, because only the chosen one could do it and eventually become the ruler of the kingdom. In the end, Arthur, following Merlin's advice, easily pulled out the sword, and immediately there were cheers of joy from the people who declared him their rightful king. Finished reading the next page, Rintarou slammed the book shut and thought that everything was just beginning. In the boy's opinion, the battles between the girls were King Arthur's inheritance, and that made them even more interesting. The blows with steel blades completely captured the attention of the two rivals, and they did not notice anything around but each other. The battle was on an equal footing, but at some point one of the girls was still able to strike a tangible blow from the throwing opponent. The girl felt confident and declared that she could not be defeated so easily. But the girl Runa Arthur was absolutely not going to give up. Felicia reproached her rival for her cheap blade that she dared to fight with. Felicia considered it a humiliation to herself. Even though they were both candidates for King Arthur's legacy, Felicia demanded that Runa take out her great Excalibur and display its power. But Runa replied to her old friend that unfortunately that was impossible. Runa hesitantly explained that she simply did not have the ability to fight with Excalibur at the moment. But Felicia continued to be indignant, for she found such an attitude insulting and affecting her resolve. Runa looked away and admitted that she had sold Excalibur. Rune began to talk about her money problems, and so she had to do just that. However, as expected, though rotten, Excalibur was worth a lot of money in the end, and so she could no longer fight with Excalibur and Felicia could forget about it. Felicia screamed in anger and called Rune the stupidest girl on earth who doesn't understand anything. Felicia reminded that Excalibur was the most important weapon of the joining king in the battle of King Arthur's succession, and proof of the right to participate in the war. And now Runa was left without Excalibur at the very beginning and doesn't think what to do next. But Runa was not worried about it and promised to buy Excalibur back when she saved up money. Then the girl said goodbye to her friend and advised her not to worry. But Felicia was furious and declared that they weren't done on this, and so Rune would lose without leaving this place. Looking at the vast night metropolis of Avalonia, Rintarou realized that this girl was the weakest. The Lords of the Lake were women who were half human and half fairy, and they were the ones who announced the start of the battle of King Arthur's succession. A long time ago, King Arthur led the Knights of the Round Table to accomplish many great things, and this battle began to find the right man to inherit King Arthur's soul and power. Unfortunately, 11 descendants with the blood of King Arthur joined in and were given the sword Excalibur, reflecting the essence of their souls. Rune was afraid of Felicia's anger and suggested that in that case everything should be solved with the help of Jax. Felicia thought for a moment and then reminded her of the true vessel of the king, and that the rank of knights could be said to represent the king himself. Rune stated that they too were kings and therefore could safely determine the winner with the help of Jax. Felicia found common sense in this proposal and agreed to participate in the battle with the help of Jax. Felicia had been taught by the Lords of the Lake a secret ritual that belonged to the king's magic. With this magic, the Knights of the Round Table who served Arthur, the great king of Britain, are summoned into the real world as vassals. Felicia felt the influence of the magical energy and wished to achieve dot. Felicia concentrated magical energy and applied the Knight's Call, trying to take the 8th Knight of the Round Table to help her. A few minutes later, a knight appeared from the magic circle and kneeling before Felicia promised to do all her bidding. Rune recognized that Felicia's jack looked quite strong, but Felicia continued to be angry and asked her friend not to waste time and call her Jack. Runa listened to her friend and also began the summoning ritual showing her magical power. But the summoned Jack caused the ineptitude of all present, because no one expected such a thing. Although Runa herself did not worry about it. But then Runa looked around and was shocked by the blatant image of the summoned girl Kay. Runa started to ask where her sword and armor were and why she was dressed so stupidly. But Kay reminded her of how Runa had forced her to take a strange part-time job as a companion for money. But she didn't like that kind of thing and had said so many times. Runa admitted that she had completely forgotten about it and was embarrassed about where she had sent Kay. The girl cried and stated that it was too much for her, because you can't treat a proud knight of the round table like that. Runa apologized for such a part-time job and asked Kay to calm down. But Felicia got tired of watching this silly scene and ordered her knight to deal with her opponent immediately. Rune was shocked and offered to talk first, but Felicia wanted to defeat her rival who was unworthy of the royal throne as soon as possible. Felicia ordered her knight to beat Rune and her jack, but try not to kill them, because they still needed to find out the location of Excalibur. The knight following the order was rapidly approaching, and Rune quickly gave her sword to Kay and ordered her to defend her. But Kay felt insecure in a silly erotic costume that was clearly not suitable for fencing. The knight threw several quick blows, but Kay was still able to block them, though she didn't know what to do next. The brutal knight's next blows were complemented by kicks, and Kay flew into the nearest glass obstacle, smashing his back. Runa decided that she was definitely not going to do any good in this situation. Meanwhile, the ruthless 8th knight was already close by and swung to strike. But at that moment, Rintarou intervened and blocked the knight's blow, thus saving the frightened Runa. With lightning-fast movements, Rintarou stood up to defend the girl, making the summoned knight nervous. After his spectacular appearance, Rintarou decided to continue surprising those around him. The guy instantly moved towards Felicia and put a sword to her neck. Rintarou declared that if the knight did anything to Rune, Felicia's head would immediately fall to the floor. Absolutely everyone was puzzled by the strange stranger's behavior, though Rintarou himself felt great, for he was already bored out of his mind. Felicia asked if Rintarou was also a participant in the Battle of King Arthur's Succession, but the boy answered ambiguously. Rintarou explained that he wasn't really an official participant since he wasn't invited by the Lords of the Lake, and then pushed the startled Felicia away. The knight caught Felicia, and Rintarou savored his moment of superiority and stated that he could easily chop off the girl's head even now. Rintarou admitted that all of this might not be interesting to him, and so Felicia would not die yet. Everyone was surprised by the guy's incredible speed and sensed the danger. Rintarou suggested Felicia to disappear immediately before he changed his mind, especially since the Battle of King Arthur's Succession had just begun and there would be a chance to find out everything later. But for today we can finish our acquaintance and it's time to say goodbye. Felicia didn't understand who this guy was and what he wanted, but she didn't dare to continue the battle. After all, Rintarou was able to resist not only her, the likely owner of Excalibur, but also the Knight of the Round Table. Felicia eventually accepted Rintarou's offer to part in peace this time, for it was the most sensible decision right now. The girl explained to her knight that it was unlikely that they could win this battle, and so at the moment it was better to retreat and consider the next encounter. Felicia then inquired about the name of the strange stranger. The guy introduced himself as Megami Rintarou, but of course that name didn't explain much to anyone. Felicia advised Rintarou to prepare for the next meeting, and also decided to warn Runa about the consequences that would await her. That was why Runa must leave the Battle of King Arthur's Succession for her own safety. But Rune resented the suggestion and reminded her that she was going to be king too. Though Felicia reminded her rival of how the governing lords of the lakes had labeled her the weakest candidate for King Arthur. Though after Rune summoned her knight to her aid, everything became clear, for instead of a knight, a half-naked girl appeared. Felicia called it a mistake for Rune to participate in this competition, since she had even sold her Excalibur. Felicia explained that it was just the advice of an old friend and Rune should take it to heart. After these words, the girl and her knight instantly disappeared, and Rintarou asked Rune if she was alright. The girl replied that she was not injured at all and wondered who exactly Rintarou was, for she had never seen him before. Rintarou decided to keep the intrigue alive and disappeared without explanation. Runa and Kay were left puzzled, for they still didn't understand who the guy who had saved them was. Kay decided that this young man is not so simple and advised Runa to be careful, because it is impossible to allow problems in the future, especially the trials are just beginning on the way to the main goal. The next morning, Rintarou was still impressed by yesterday's demonstration of his strength, for at that moment it was incredibly easy and pleasant for him to be strong and agile. Rintarou was counting on the fact that after such a spectacular appearance, the participants of King Arthur's Succession would ask to become their comrade, because everyone would want to use his strength to achieve their goal. After all this competition is taking place for the birth of the true king who will rule over all. Rintarou, of course, was neither king nor valet, and so he expected to join someone's squad. Rintarou had chosen Rune's candidacy perfectly for himself and wanted her to be the one to be king for him. Rintarou hoped thanks to his incredible strength to stir up the lords of the lake, who would be frightened by his abilities and perhaps even call him a monster. Then Rintarou found himself at the large gate and remembered that Runa Arthur was a second-grade student at this school. Entering the school, Rintarou noticed the huge crowd that had gathered near the stage, where a young girl was greeting everyone on this beautiful morning. The huge crowd of mostly guys were praising Kay, who was actually very shy and not too eager to perform on that stage. Rintarou noticed the girl's mood, but it didn't matter to the crowd. Meanwhile, the student council was discussing the number of tickets sold. As it turned out, the council had decided to raise the price by 20%, which only increased the number of fans, and eventually all the tickets were sold out. Runa was happy for this result, because Kay could really make a huge amount of money and it was impossible to call such a useful knight some kind of mistake. Runa decided that in the next election, if she used Kay, she would easily become the student council president in the end. After all, only the student council under Rune's leadership could guarantee Kay's constant performance. Rasuto was shocked by what was happening in the school. All of this she resembled some kind of absurdity. Runa met a glance with the guy and realized that it was the same savior who had unexpectedly appeared last night. The girl was incredibly surprised that Megami Rintarou was also studying at this school. But the boy explained that he had recently arrived from the mainland and would indeed be studying here. Runa smiled seductively and decided to find out more about this guy. Just then, Kay continued to perform during her concert and praised Runa, thanking her for this great opportunity to be with the audience. This was the first time Rintarou had seen something like this, and he didn't expect that it was possible to hold concerts while studying for personal purposes. Rune explained that she was the president of the student council and could do whatever she wanted at the school, so she was using her position for her own purposes. Rintarou decided that none of this was any of his business because he had his own goals. Then he explained to the narcissistic girl that he actually came here for a reason and he had an important matter that the so-called king of the student council should know about immediately. Rune replied that she had guessed that Rintarou wanted to become her loyal vassal, and that was why he had come to meet her. The girl sat down in a chair and then brazenly stretched her leg forward and ordered the boy to lick her foot as a ceremony of becoming a vassal. The battle that would decide who would become king and take over the world is called the Battle of King Arthur's Succession. And Rintarou, for fun, planned an introduction to one of Rune's candidates. Rintarou was able to save the girl from defeat and demonstrated his strength and thought that because of this act he would be gladly accepted as an assistant. But Runa treated the guy arrogantly and decided that he just wanted to be a regular vassal. The girl offered to lick her foot to show her respect and loyalty, and then she would probably accept Rintarou as her servant. Runa had full confidence in her high-status charisma. Therefore, she appreciated Rintarou's willingness to become a servant for her, for he too was influenced by her charisma. The girl noticed the hesitation of the guy and asked why he hesitated, because he himself wanted to become her vassal, and therefore should immediately kneel down and lick her feet. Well, Rintarou's reaction came as a surprise to everyone present. The guy forcefully threw his briefcase at the narcissistic Runa, who fell off the chair. Everyone was shocked by such an act, and Runa immediately lost her confidence and asked why Rintarou was so rude. But the guy explained to Rune that she was the one who looked like an arrogant fool who was being rude to the person who saved her in a difficult situation. Suddenly, Rintarou was praised for his brave act. Memori Tsugumi stated that Runa is a real evil who is harming the order of the institution and should not serve this person in any way. Tsugumi accused the student council president of organizing an obscene show that violates public morality. But Runa called it a campaign because the next student council election was coming up, so she had to get the votes. Tsugumi was still outraged and said that it was a violation of school rules. But Runa called her rival stupid and said that she is the only one who makes the school rules here. But Tsugumi promised to never accept those stupid rules, because Runa just took advantage of the weaknesses of many people at the top of the academy and manipulate their opinions all the time. Rintarou decided, well, this confrontation between the two girls reminded him of the situation between an evil dictator and a fighter for justice, though there was certainly no particular point to these conversations. Tsugumi ordered her associates to follow her and promised that today they would finally capture Rune and make him confess his crimes in the counseling room. But of course Rune was not going to do that, because with her criminal record she could not be the president of the student council. As a result, a real scandal broke out between Rune's opponents and associates. A lot of guys took the side of the student council president, and the confrontation with the so-called rebels began. Rintarou was shocked by this stupid situation and watched the confrontation from the side. The guy was shocked at what was going on in this institution, and suddenly a strange girl asked him if he now understood what was going on here at all. The girl stood quietly and also watched what was going on and then admitted that she was pleased to meet Rintarou. The girl then introduced herself as Naoki Fayus and explained that she was the secretary of the student council. Naoki asked if Rintarou had really transferred from the mainland to this school. The boy explained that he had, and admitted that he was surprised by the mayhem going on at the school. Naoki explained that it was because Runa had the support of many students, so she did whatever she wanted. But of course there are those who do not agree with the student council president's policies and are constantly in confrontations with her. But still, most of the students are in favor of Rune and are willing to do anything to support her. Rintarou was shocked by such processes in the academy because it was all wrong. Rune's grades are excellent and she is especially good at sports, and as student council president she is very professional. For example, she was able to change the cafeteria menu, where almost all students were unhappy. Runa was able to rid the academy of teachers who went around harassing female students. Runa is also constantly planning various fun events, and of course she does it not always for her own good. Runa doesn't understand why her desire to eat good food and get rid of teachers' harassment has such a negative effect on some of the academy's students. However, even though Runa does everything for the sake of satisfying her desires, it ends up being for the benefit of almost all of the students. That is why this girl is such a mysterious person. Naoki asked Rintarou that did her words upset him so much, but the guy was just trying to realize what exactly he was facing. Naoki advised the guy to just relax and accept things as they are, and realize that Runa is actually a benefactor to them who cares and gives pleasure. That's why Rintarou should take care of Runa too, because she deserves it. But the guy didn't resent it and asked how he could even make up his mind so quickly, since he only recently met her. Naoki explained that it was very unusual for Runa herself to want to make someone her vassal, which meant that she really liked Rintarou. This made the boy happy, because if that was the case, then Rune was seriously interested in him, and his show of strength had impressed her. After that he went to his new class, where he was introduced to all the students and asked to treat him well. But as it turned out, Rintarou got into a very problematic class, where there are problematic children, and this is the reason for the constant disturbances and relationship troubles. Runa asked Cujo who he was referring to, and the guy immediately pointed at the girl, blaming her for his stomach pains. The whole thing caused massive laughter in the class and pissed Cujo off even more. All of this didn't really bother Rintarou too much, and he just wanted to find out more about who was really who here. But then Rintarou remembered how he used to be called a monster, because he had offended a guy who only knew how to play soccer. And even though that guy studied too much, he lost and called Rintarou a monster, who would have been better off never being born in this world at all. Rintarou once again felt that unpleasant taste of being given and decided that as soon as he started to be serious he was immediately treated like a monster, and so this world stopped caring about him. Meanwhile, the teacher was busy explaining an important topic at the blackboard and said that the level of the class was too low, because they could not solve such a problem. None of the students could really answer the teacher's question, and all were accused of being completely worthless by the youth of today. Naoki explained that this pseudo teacher had just recently replaced the dismissed teacher, and was treating everyone very strictly. As it turns out, this narcissistic teacher aspired to become a great mathematician, but in the end he failed and became an ordinary teacher who hates his students. As revenge for his shattered dreams, Sudo takes revenge on his students, and Runa once had a math battle with this teacher. Since then, the vindictive teacher has identified Runa as his personal enemy, and never misses a chance to hurt the girl. Just at this moment, teacher Sudo offered Runa to answer this very difficult question, unless of course she refused to do so. Rintarou of course realized that this question was much more complicated than the school curriculum, and it was getting out of hand. The guy decided that it didn't matter how well Rune studied, because her level couldn't be higher than the school level anyway, so it was unlikely that she would solve this difficult task. But the girl replied that she was very disappointed since her studies had given her such a simple task, and in that case she only had to solve it gracefully. Rune then called Sudo a real loser who had destroyed his own dreams, and now he would not admit defeat, and could not start again, and merely possessing a cowardly, pathetic and feeble mind tries to insult the weaker students. And he does it because of a foolish and boundless desire for recognition and self-satisfaction. All this is absolute nonsense, which is done only for the sake of his self-respect and sense of his own superiority. And now the teacher forcing hard work on the twists in his head, which has absolutely nothing useful in it, finally produced this stupid math question. Runa promised to immediately prove that this low-level work was a useless waste of effort. But then the unexpected happened and Rune claimed that Rintarou had told her all of this because he keeps sitting there mumbling to himself and can't shut up, so the teacher should do something about this undisciplined guy immediately. Everyone in the class was surprised by the girl's behavior and immediately stared at Rintarou. Rintarou was puzzled because he had no intention of getting into math problems and becoming the teacher's enemy, but everything pointed to the fact that Runa had sacrificed him for her own satisfaction, because it was interesting to see how the nasty Sudo would be angry with the new student. Sudo looked at the new student with interest and offered Rintarou to show his incredible knowledge of math. The boy was puzzled, because now all the rage and anger of this man will be directed only at him, and it was necessary to look for a way out of this situation. Rintarou, of course, could not solve a complicated math problem, but Runa reminded him of his status as a vassal and ordered him to solve this problem instead of his king. Rintarou didn't like this situation, because if he was going to join Rune in the battle for the inheritance, he couldn't show his uselessness. Eventually gaining confidence and courage, Rintarou headed to the board, while declaring that he was ready to settle such a worthless matter. Sudo was pleased and looked forward to seeing the next student embarrass himself at the blackboard. But for all that, Rintarou didn't want to reveal his true capabilities in front of all the people, because it could bring more problems. Meanwhile, the teacher even offered to use a hint and started to draw some tricky formula on the board. But Rintarou gave the correct answer without a second thought, and the teacher almost dropped the chalk. Rintarou began to tell that the smallest point and the smallest exponent of singularity is 2, and the smallest exponent of b is 1. And if you use the Mahler expansion, you can easily one more candidate, and the correct answer to this question is 2. The teacher was shocked and the guy kept talking and explained that this is a multivariate extreme value determination function assignment. And although the assignment is disguised as high school math, it is still higher math from university. And in general, without knowing the new concept from the recently published thesis, it is impossible for any high school student to solve this assignment. Sudo asked how on earth Rintarou was able to solve this problem at a glance without resorting to using a formula, even if he is familiar with higher math. The kid didn't go into details, and the teacher offered to test Rintaurou's level if he was really that good at math. But Rintarou suggested that the teacher calm down and stop all this nonsense, because he was making a fool of himself in front of all the students. Sudo was incredibly upset, because the problem he had put a lot of effort into was so easily solved by an ordinary guy. But Rintarou asked if this was the hardest problem Sudo could think of if he really wanted to become a great mathematician. Sudo at that moment thought that the young lad might be a genius and was exactly the same kind of person he had been unable to resist in the past. The class immediately began a lively discussion of the new student's incredible math abilities. After all, according to many, it was unnatural for an ordinary guy to be so good at complex problems. Rintarou didn't like such moments and only wrinkled his nose in discomfort. It was always the same in situations like this, and people were constantly surprised by Rintarou's abilities, and only a few could handle their confusion. Usually after the confusion, people would become envious and afraid, and after that Rintarou would definitely become an object of hatred. He would be treated like a monster and avoided. But Rintarou decided that he didn't care at all about the people in this world, because he was aiming for something completely different. Rune was delighted with how Rintarou had handled the difficult task and humiliated the vile teacher. The girl thanked her vassal for completing the task. A series of events in the new class forced Rintarou to be careful and stay vigilant. Because of certain circumstances, Rintarou was born with abilities beyond those of humans. Rintarou was born with abilities that surpassed those of a human being, and he was able to achieve unbelievable results in many different fields without much effort. Because of this, from a young age Rintarou was treated as a real monster, and even his own parents left home because they were afraid of their child. Cheater powers are only praised in the early books, but in reality, when something like that happens, they are like a disease. That's why Rintarou tried to look like a normal person. Rune continued to praise her vassal and called him a good acquisition to achieve her goal. The girl then handed out pieces of paper to everyone for some reason and explained that these were the questions and answers for today's lesson that teacher Sudo was giving them. All the students were surprised because there was the exact same question that was asked earlier. Rintarou was surprised, for Rune had actually done it. Magic is actually the power of the spirit that is transmitted to the world. It is a power that can make the dreams or wishes of the caster come true. If one wishes hard for something, it is sure to come true. Magic was a power that everyone possessed even before the development of science and civilization. However, the consciousness of people of the present generation has become hostage to the curtain of consciousness, due to which the number of magicians has significantly decreased. All people have accepted the reality that magic does not exist and eventually stopped dreaming of something great. Rune, as it turned out, owns the magic of deception, which allows you to control the consciousness of people and cause them illusions. That being said, deception magic was a rather elemental magic. It had no effect on Rintarou and Kay or other people from the other side of the world. But actually, to the guy's surprise, Kay didn't notice the deception at all and actually believed in Rune's abilities. In the end, almost everyone decided that Rintarou was able to calmly solve a difficult math problem just because he acted in concert with Rune. The girl suddenly hugged Rintarou and called him her childhood friend, and now their fateful reunion had taken place at this school. Rintarou attempted to protest, but the girl covered his mouth and then began to talk about how often they had fooled around as kids, and now she had come up with this wonderful plan to finally humiliate the nasty teacher. Of course, everyone believed this false story and began to admire Rune's ingenuity, and then called them a beautiful couple. Everyone was especially pleased by the idiotic expression on Sudo's face, who almost had a stroke from such a defeat. Runa decided to take advantage of the situation and said that she would definitely try to put the strong in their place and protect the weak, because she was the fairest president of the student council, so everyone should support her in the next election if they wanted to feel protected. All the students promised to unanimously vote for Rune and called her the best student council president. Rintarou was shocked by the cunning of this cute girl. After all, she was able to use everything for her own benefit, and it was incomprehensible why she was called useless. Then the girl whispered that she had an important conversation and so Rintarou should come to the roof after class. Runa had been a success, as she was once again the center of attention. Many people wanted details about her childhood together with Rintarou, and now she would make up whatever she wanted. Rintarou realized that the girl he was about to join was suddenly an incredible person. After all, he had expected Runa to be a resident of an English village who was completely ignorant of the outside world, and in the end she had completely outplayed him. Rintarou didn't like it, because he was deviating too much from the original plan, and now all the initiative was in the hands of Runa, and he himself remained in the second role. All the students were happy and laughing, and asked Rintarou to do his best as Rune's partner. After all, being her protector was certainly not an easy task, but then it was the destiny of a childhood friend. Rintarou noticed how happy all the students in the class were at the moment. Even though Rune was doing everything to fulfill her own desires, she was bringing joy to others along with it. All of this made Rintarou even more curious about what was going on, because Rune was much more mysterious than she originally seemed. Rune apologized for being late, as Rintarou had to wait for her for quite some time. But suddenly the guy started to get angry and asked how long he could even wait for Rune. Rintarou reminded him that they were supposed to meet right after school, and now it was nighttime. The guy explained that even he was used to the cold stares of others trying to keep his promises, and Runa acted like a real bitch. But the girl advised him not to be so petty, after all she had come to the meeting. Rintarou realized at that moment that Runa felt absolutely no guilt, and it was useless to talk to her about it. Rintarou stated that he too had an important conversation to have with Rune, and this only brought a smile to the girl who was enjoying her vassal's emotions. In the end, they both agreed that it would be good to chat about the recent events that had happened to them. After all, now was the most convenient time to discuss their future together. Rintarou asked for permission to serve under Rune in the War of King Arthur's legacy, for that was what he desired most. Rune agreed and gave him the right to be her loyal vassal, but Rintarou didn't like the word vassal very much. Rune explained that if Rintarou really wanted to serve the true king, his shyness was preventing it, and so he was upset. Though one must realize that it is also the duty of a royal vassal to accept such treatment. But then the narcissistic Runa again suggested Rintarou to go through the initiation rite and lick his feet. The boy did not change his mind and sent the girl to the floor. Rune's head hurt, but Rintarou said that he didn't want to do that at all, because it was disgusting and vulgar. He said he only wanted to talk about his participation in the Battle of King Arthur's succession, and for that he wanted to join Rune's squad. Guy reminded him that there are 11 kings involved in this battle. All this takes place on an artificial island where the 4 treasures of King Arthur are being fought for. The rules of this battle are simple, and whoever collects all 4 treasures will be the winner. But at the same time, murder among the kings, as well as appropriating the treasures of others, is allowed, and therefore Runa must realize that she will need combat power in this battle. And so the smartest move for Runa would be to include a new member in her squad. Rintarou promised to do everything to lead her to victory. But then suddenly, the magic medallion on the girl's chest glowed with a bright light, and after that, an image of a woman's body appeared from behind. After a few seconds, a seductive girl in a nurse's outfit appeared and it surprised Rintarou. Kei was embarrassed and Runa explained that the work permit at this school really saves and one can earn good money that way. Rintarou was shocked and asked what kind of work Kei was doing in such a vulgar outfit. Kei stated that they can't trust a guy like that. Although Rintarou at that moment was looking closely at the locket with the number 3 on it, Rintarou realized that Kei was the third seat of the round table and she was King Arthur's sister, and at the same time she was the Jack of Fleece. Kei decided that Rintarou is a man who got the warrior piece from Lady Felicia and the others, and he is not as simple as he seems. Kei called Rintarou an overly suspicious person and doesn't understand why he would even want to join them. The girl threateningly raised her sword and advised Rintarou to tell the whole truth. The Shard of the Round Table is a medallion like this left behind by King Arthur and the 12 knights, each king using such in them the blood of King Arthur, and the Shard of the Round Table as a catalyst. This allows the dormant swordsman of the Round Table, called Valet, to be summoned into this world. The king cannot summon Arthur himself, who occupied the first seat at the Round Table, or the warrior from the dangerous 13th seat. This leaves 11 swordsmen available from the 2nd through 12th places. Kei demanded an explanation from Rintarou, for she needed to understand why he had approached Rune in the first place. Rintarou explained that he simply wanted to familiarize himself with the weakest candidates for King Arthur. It was a perfectly normal desire for someone who wanted to help. The boy noticed Kei's angry look and explained that that was exactly what the Lords of the Lakes had said. Rune's reaction turned out to be surprise, and Rintarou realized that she herself did not know why she was called that. The strength of the king's Excalibur and the strength and discipline of the Jacks had won this battle. Rintarou explained that as far as he knew, Rune was not only bad at wielding her Excalibur, but had sold the blade altogether. Rintarou stated that he certainly didn't want to offend anyone, but Rune's Jack is considered the weakest of all of King Arthur's knights. These words made Kei angry, for she clearly did not consider herself the weakest. Kei declared that she was far stronger than Dagonet, and then demanded that Rintarou take back what he had said. But the boy reminded her that Sir Dagonet was a court jester, and boasting about being stronger than him wasn't very impressive. Rintarou stated that he was indeed very strong, and if he joined the squad, their abilities would increase greatly, and their chances of victory would increase many times over. The guy promised to do everything to ensure that Runa would be victorious in this battle for power. Rune thought this was all very funny and asked how Rintarou knew about her Excalibur. The guy stated that it didn't matter at all who he really was, but there was one person who helped him learn about Excalibur. Runa asked what Rintarou's true purpose was and why he chose their weakest squad, since it made more sense to join a stronger squad and achieve victory faster. Rintarou explained that it's all very funny, because he can lead any squad to victory, and that's why he decided to join the weakest squad, because it's much more fun. The guy admitted that he is very bored in this world, and so he craves for unusual entertainment. In this world there are about reincarnations with peerless pieter abilities, and this applies to him. But being the strongest and smartest is very boring. Rintarou stated that he has no desire to live when there is no sense of duty, for such a way of life suits more the dead. The boy asked what else Runa wanted to hear before he joined the squad. Rintarou offered to take his life and promised that if Runa didn't agree to take him into her squad, he would make her do it by force. Kei roared with anger and then stated that now Rintarou had shown his true personality, and such rude men are insulting this great battle. Rintarou decided that in such a case he could demonstrate his strength, and such an idea pleased Rune. The girl unexpectedly Kei approached Rintarou and agreed to accept him into her squad. Rune managed to surprise not only Kei, but also Rintarou with his act. But then the girl admitted that Rintarou was sometimes very annoying. But since he wanted to become a loyal vassal himself, then he was given the chance to serve his king. Runa then motioned the chair to her again and reminded her of the important initiation ritual, but Rintarou immediately shouted that he wasn't going to lick her feet. Kei was also outraged and didn't want Rintarou with them at all. Rintarou ended up accusing Rune of having strange tendencies and advised her to think about her behavior. Meanwhile, Kei was trying to talk Rune out of her decision to accept a guy on the team. Rune once again asked if Rintarou was willing to fight in her squad and put his life in danger for her to become a true king. The lad affirmed his desire, though he was already tired of this communication. Rune called Rintarou her vassal from this moment on, but at the same time she does not expect him to be completely loyal, for he had refused the ritual. Rintarou was beginning to find it increasingly difficult to understand Rune with her sly phrases, and the girl meanwhile stated to Kei that it was good to learn the true power of the new member of the squad. Rune stated that it would be really fun to use such a wayward guy as a new weapon in this battle, though it shouldn't be difficult for her. Kei and Rintarou were shocked at Runa's self-confidence, for she thought she was the best as always. Rintarou did agree to call himself a vassal, though he had originally hoped to scare Rune and Kei. Kei didn't like all of this and called Runa a grown child who had made a strange guy her vassal just because it was funny. Kei reminded her that it was only her battle, but as a loyal knight, she could only stand by her side and share her will. Kei then apologized and admitted that she was a useless knight. Kei recalled how she failed to protect Arthur, failed to protect her brother even when he pulled Excalibur in Camelot. Kei promised to still try to protect Rune and answer her call. The girl then turned to Rintarou. Kei explained to him that if he harmed Rune for her own ends, she would cut him in half, even if it took all her strength. Rintarou promised to heed this warning, as he doesn't want to die at Kei's hands at all. The boy then asked Rune, calling her king, what her plans were for the future. Rintarou explained that there were many things they could do now, such as scouting the actions of other kings or looking for new allies. In addition, they now had the opportunity to make a preemptive strike against the other kings. Rune pondered over the prospects and stated that for the moment, she had one serious thing to do to win this battle. The girl then ordered her new vassal to move out immediately. Meanwhile, Felicia continued to be angry and cursed the stranger who had prevented her from destroying Rune, for she was confident in her abilities. She kept thinking of Rintarou's face and couldn't understand who he really was, since he was able to decide the outcome of the battle so easily. Suddenly, two figures came out of the darkness and called Felicia a disappointment, because she was so furious that she was ready to kill Rune with her own hands. The mysterious people reminded that they were parts of the ancient noble families passing the blood of King Arthur to the new age, and the current head of the Ferald family might be ashamed of all this. Felicia was surprised and asked what Lord Gloria was doing here, but the guy advised to relax a little. After all, they are allies united to win the battle of King Arthur's succession. Lord Gloria explained that he just wanted to help his ally since Felicia had to fight such a hard battle. Lord Gloria promised to use his Excalibur to quickly destroy the smaller opponents, but Felicia asked not to do that, since it was not yet time for Gloria to intervene. Felicia reminded that Rune was not a legitimate prey and it was against the Knight's code to take someone else's, and if Gloria interfered, their alliance pact would be terminated. Gloria laughed and promised not to take her precious Rune from Felicia, and so Lord Ferald can take it easy. There is also a special hope for the elven blood that flows in Felicia's veins, and so her power will come in handy in the future. And in the announced quest for the 4 treasures by the Lords of the Lake, it is better to remain allies. However, Knight Rintarou turned out to be a really problematic character. It wasn't like he had royal blood in him and there was no reason to call him a king. But you can't call him a jack either, because he's not one of the Knights of the Round Table, which means he has his own purpose for being involved in all this. And in this case, it would be best to call Rintarou a joker, because since he is so mysterious, it is not known what to expect from him. But in any case, Rintarou the Joker has managed to impress the Lords of the Lake, and that means he is a very unusual person. The mysterious girl has stated that Rintarou is very much like her, and since it's such a one-sided game, then in any case such amusement should also be in this case. Lord Gloria then stated that Felicia was at liberty to keep Rune as her prey and he still shouldn't interfere until a certain point. Felicia agreed to this cooperation, but Gloria reminded that if she needed the help of an ally, he was ready to join immediately. Meanwhile, Rintarou continued to follow Rune and didn't know where they ended up. The girl's motives were also unclear, for she never gave any details. Runa went on a mission to infiltrate the territory of the educational institution. It seemed that there was important information stored there, and she wanted to get it secretly. The main problem was the safe, because even thanks to the extensive network of agents, Rune could not find out the correct code, so she asked Rintarou to open it. The boy promised to do it quickly and reminded her of his phenomenal abilities. After only a couple minutes, the safe door was open and Runa declared that she would win the fight with these documents. Rintarou asked what she would use the documents for, but Rune replied thoughtfully that such a brave guy was afraid of something. The girl joked that Rintarou was just a mask and that he was just a cowardly boy. But the boy reminded her that he had only asked for an explanation of what the documents would be used for. Then Rune still explained that these documents were midterm test questions. Rintarou now understood why he had been so secretive about getting into the teacher's room, because if he knew the questions, he could easily pass the exam. Runa admitted that her approval rating had dropped a bit lately, and that it was the fault of that evil disciplinary committee that was playing the role of resistance and spreading their propaganda. Rintarou replied that he didn't know why so many people supported and approved of Runa so strongly at all. The girl explained that she would distribute the information she received to the students who got very bad grades and also to those guys in the sports clubs who are waiting for the competition, and thus it would attract even more votes to her side. So for the sake of restoring her ranking, it was necessary to take this serious step. But Rintarou was incredibly indignant and hit Rune hard with a stack of papers. The girl immediately shouted that she was the king and the vassal had no right to do that to her. The guy called Rune a real fool, because all these papers will not help at all in the battle of King Arthur's succession, and they are engaged in useless business. But the girl replied that first she needs to become a king in this school, because how will she be able to eventually rule the whole world without support? Rintarou agreed with the girl to a certain extent, but still thought that she was wrong about many things. After that, the guy offered to take pictures of all the necessary questions on their phones and get out of the teacher's lounge as soon as possible. But suddenly strange sounds were heard from behind, which frightened the information snatchers. A few seconds later, a light came on in the room and immediately Tsugumi and her followers appeared. It all looked like a perfectly thought out trap, and now Rune had to explain herself. Tsugumi stated triumphantly that she had long ago noticed Runa's interest in the teacher's room and realized that she wanted to steal the tests, all for her own selfish purposes to keep power in the school. But now all the members of the Disciplinary Committee were here to arrest Rune. The girl of course didn't want to admit her guilt and asked Tsugumi not to make her the ultimate villain. But of course it looked that way, and Tsugumi ordered the two intruders to be captured immediately. Rune decided to run and ordered Rintarou to keep up. Rintarou, meanwhile, had already cleverly dodged the attack and managed to send one opponent to the floor. After that, Rintarou showed marvels of agility and rushed away from the room together with his queen. The guys from the Disciplinary Committee didn't expect such impudence and didn't have time to grab the offenders. The escape was successful, but Tsugumi wasn't worried, because her men were located throughout the teacher's wing of the building, so the intruders wouldn't be able to escape even if they got out of this room. Rune and Rintarou were already running down the long corridor, trying to get away from their pursuers, and so far they had succeeded. The boy was surprised at the sheer number of enemies Runa had made, but the girl angrily barked that all these people are real fools since they dared to betray the true king. Rintarou looked at Rune's face twisted with anger and decided that she was more like a demon lord at the moment, so those guys were heroes. Runa was at a loss as to how she could get out of this situation. Rintarou immediately suggested to carefully use magic acceleration, and thus break through the pursuer's strength. Some people who came from another world have an ability called magic power acceleration. With a special breathing technique, magical energy can awaken superhuman strength in the body and sharpen the senses. Rintarou explained that dealing with so many opponents without magic acceleration would be a very tedious task. Unexpectedly, Rune explained that she didn't really want to resort to brute force against newcomers. But suddenly, Rune and Rintarou sensed something magical and immediately heard a strange clanking sound that startled the fugitives. The girl did not understand what had happened, because now the pursuers did not see them, although they were only a few meters away from them. Some invisible barrier had formed, and Rintarou explained that it was only the magic of transformation of another world. The curtain of consciousness that separates the real world from the illusory temporarily becomes blurred, forming a magical barrier. Rintarou explained that all this helped they had gotten to the other side of the real world and now found themselves pulled into another space, which is a kind of looking glass of mere reflection. It is actually a nowhere place that is like a trap. The followers cannot feel and realize the illusory world because of the curtain of consciousness. Therefore, after Rune and Rintarou were in the other world, it was as if time had frozen. Rune still didn't understand who could do this to them, but Rintarou immediately realized that only their enemy could do this, because the battle of King Arthur's succession had already begun long ago. And it is not necessary to wait for the announcement of the search for the 4 treasures, because you can simply destroy their rivals before that. But suddenly one of the guys tried to grab Rune, which frightened the girl. Rintarou instantly pulled Rune aside, and then explained that it was probably puppet magic if the enemy controls so many people at once. Then he has a very good wizard at his disposal. To drag decent people into such a showdown is evidence of special determination, and the enemy is very dangerous. Rintarou decided to apply a magic shield, but the puppets immediately started trying to break through the magic shield, and Rintarou realized that they would not be able to hold back the opponents for long. Rintarou decided that the students are under someone's magical control, and their physical abilities have been amplified many times. Following the orders of a powerful wizard, these people are filled with the desire to kill Rune, so convincing them is impossible and escape will be useless. Rintarou decided that the only option left was to kill the opponents. The guy drew his weapon and said that it was nothing personal, and the students should only blame their fate that brought them to this place. But Runa grabbed Rintarou and tried to stop him. The girl explained that one must not do that, for she could never forgive the killing of innocent students. Rintarou reminded what a difficult situation they were in. If they didn't fight to the death, they would have no chance to escape. And if those puppets caught Rune, they would immediately tear her into small pieces. But the girl said that even for her personal safety, she wouldn't allow her students to be killed, and that wasn't a solution to the problem. Rintarou called Runa too naive girl, and so she is unlikely to become a worthy king without the ability to sacrifice someone. But Runa stated that she is indeed a king, and therefore these children students of the school where she acts as king are her subjects. And if Rintarou harmed them, she would personally take action against him. The girl really showed fortitude and determination at this point and declared that she was the king and Rintarou must obey her orders. A vassal had no right to challenge the king's decision. After a few seconds, Rune called for Kay and explained that the two of them would try to divert the puppet's attention, and Rintarou should make sure to find the person responsible for the attack and deal with him in the meantime. Rintarou asked if Rune could really hold out while he dealt with the puppeteer. The girl replied that if she didn't, she would prove herself incapable of being king. But that wouldn't happen. Rintarou called it all vain bravery, but still he didn't argue with Rune and decided to really find the cunning puppeteer as soon as possible. Kay was shocked by what was happening, because she didn't expect to be attacked by a huge crowd of angry students right away. Rintarou advised Rune not to die until he found the main culprit. The boy decided to hurry up, because Runa's position was very precarious. But Runa did not feel the danger and promised the enchanted students release, because her vassal is already dealing with the problem. Rune had complete faith in her vassal, but Rintarou thought it was foolish and naive, for he might well have been a traitor working for the enemy. But he was interested in the way Rune talked to him, because it was the first time in this world that such a thing had happened, and he had to hurry to save his king. In the meantime, Runa had decided to be alone and was deftly dodging the attacks of the puppets. She was sure that her faithful vassal would find a solution to the problem and save everyone. Kay had already realized what was going on, but she didn't understand why she was ordered to follow him and not stay to protect Rune. But Rintarou asked Kay not to talk too much, because there was no time to waste. The guy reminded that they were vassals of the king, and as such they must strictly follow Runa's orders. And the only goal they must accomplish now is to find the puppeteer and destroy him. Kay asked if Rintarou is a man who has a connection to that era of legends, and so it would be strange for a person living in that era to ask such questions. Kay still asked if she understood correctly that they once served the same king. The puppeteer was able to drag numerous disciples into this dimension to pit them against Rune. On top of that, the magic power greatly enhanced the physical abilities of the puppets. Moreover, the power of magic was inversely proportional to the distance, and thus the wizard was bound to be nearby if he used such strong magic. Kay realized that the space transformation of another world, but where it was exactly remained a mystery, and time was running out. Then suddenly a glowing object appeared in the distance, which turned out to be a small flying pixie messenger girl. Rintarou immediately realized that this was the puppeteer's way of inviting them to a meeting. Kay suggested that it was all a clever trap, but Rintarou decided that it was hardly a trap, for it was vain to specifically hint at the existence of a trap. It would be wise to wait for the victim to fall into the trap. Rintarou said that even if there was a trap ahead of them, he would destroy everything in his path and reach his destination. Rintarou asked Kay to speed up, for the puppeteer was already looking forward to this meeting and should not be made to worry. Rintarou immediately noticed the familiar silhouettes of Felicia and her knight, and now it was clear who was pulling the strings. Felicia greeted the guests she had expected to see much earlier. Rintarou looked at the girl carefully and said that judging by her appearance, it was hard to imagine that she would go for such devious tricks. Felicia rejoiced at her rival's surprise and explained that she had inherited ancient elven blood and therefore had magical abilities. Therefore, unlike Rune, who only has muscles instead of brains, she is much happier using her intelligence. Felicia then realized that Rune wasn't around, which means she had set Rintarou and Kay on her. Meanwhile, she herself is watching from the sidelines. Felicia mewed in anger and demanded that they not make a fool of her. Rintarou called it all nonsense and advised to deal with the problem as quickly as possible, especially since Rune wasn't here right now. The loyal knight promised to repay Rintarou for their last meeting, but Rintarou only laughed in response and said that it was all useless because no one knows the true capabilities of his body. But suddenly Kay, who also didn't know all of Rintarou's capabilities, intervened in the situation. The girl rushed forward and decided to be the first to enter the battle to prove her usefulness. Kay decided that now was her moment of glory and promised to buy time. and Rintarou must defeat Mrs. Felicia as soon as possible, and then they will help Rune get rid of the puppets. But the fearless knight was not afraid of Kay at all and easily blocked the blow, and then he reminded that Kay is the weakest knight of the Round Table. Therefore, she should remember the reason for this nickname well. Kay was furious at her opponent's insolence and tried to deliver several more powerful blows, which unfortunately did not lead to victory. Lord Gawain's retaliatory blow stunned Kay and she lost her balance, feeling unbearable pain. Kay flew off to the side and landed painfully on the cold floor. Felicia thanked her faithful servant for her bravery and protection. Felicia was delighted by Lord Gawain's show of strength and wondered if Rintarou now understood the meaning of her words. Lord Gawain is a swordsman known for his armor, chosen by Gallatin and ranked 8th in the Round Table. Gawain is known as the undaunted man of his country, and the rightful heir to King Lot, the majestic ruler of all Britain and nephew of King Arthur. Felicia called her loyal vassal the strongest knight of the Round Table, for he excels in bravery and yet he is an honest and highly moral man. Lord Gawain is most deserving of King Arthur's trust and is a true example of a true knight. Lord Gawain enjoyed the praise for himself, but still stated that calling him the strongest knight of the Round Table embarrassed Felicia too much. Though of course compared to the weakest knight of the Round Table, Kay, he feels much more confident. Felicia reminded that Kay only took her place at the Round Table because of King Arthur's pity. Vidia, she really is the worst knight, and so the outcome of this battle is predetermined in advance. Kay was really frustrated and saw no chance for her victory. After all, just one blow from Gawain had crushed her. Rintarou asked the girl to keep her spirits up and promised to deal with the narcissistic opponents. Rintarou reminded of Kay's real role that she had to fulfill since the beginning of the formation of the Round Table, and that role is to fight. And if Kay hadn't been by Arthur's side, the king would have broken down somewhere in the middle of his military career. Kay was surprised at the guy's words, but Rintarou meanwhile headed forward. Rintarou stated that now it was his time to fulfill the lead role in this situation. Rintarou was approaching his opponent with determination and surprised Felicia with it. The girl could not believe that such a modern man as Mr. Rintarou decided to fight with a glorified knight. Gawain promised not to repeat past mistakes and destroy Rintarou. Lord Gawain stated that he had accidentally missed an unexpected blow during the last battle, but it would not happen again. Kay was frightened and explained to Rintarou that he didn't stand a chance because the strength of a man from the modern world and a man from the legends are drastically different, and so one must have a good plan. Rintarou replied to the girl that he didn't really have any prepared plan, because a plan is usually used when fighting a stronger opponent. Rintarou stated that he did not consider himself weaker than Lord Gawain, and so he did not need any plan, for he would easily defeat the ancient knight. Gawain was furious at the young lad's insolence and declared that insulting a great knight should be repaid with death. Rintarou praised Gawain for his fine words and laughed in his opponent's face. Both such an incompetent and dull knight as Gawain should have been ashamed to sit at the same table with King Arthur. The girls were shocked by Rintarou's behavior and awaited Gawain's reaction. Rintarou suggested that the enraged rival come closer and then he would show him how great the difference in their strength was. Lord Gawain was furious and rushed into the attack, trying to make a quick decisive strike. The girls at that moment synchronously sighed, expecting the worst. But Rintarou, without much emotion and effort, easily reflected the powerful blow of the famous knight. Felicia watched this magnificent performance with interest and hoped that her faithful vassal would destroy his opponent. Rintarou did not miss a single lunge of Gawain and skillfully conducted a counterattack, from which the great knight flew far back. The illustrious knight of the Round Table was shocked with the strength of an ordinary guy, for no one could have stood up to him like that before. Rintarou enjoyed watching his opponent's startled face, and then asked how he liked such a surprise. Kay and Felicia also couldn't believe what was happening. After all, Gawain was considered an invincible knight. Rintarou's next attack was barely blocked by Gawain, and even the floor under the knight's feet cracked from the powerful pressure. The guy's blows were so fast and swift that Gawain lost confidence and felt fear. Despite Gawain's desperate attempts to fight back, his blows could still be deadly, and Rintarou deftly dodged them. The steel of the blade jingled from the powerful blows, threatening to break from the intense pressure. At this point, Felicia decided to intervene in the situation. A violent explosion caused by magic threw the opponents in different directions, but it was not the end of the confrontation. Rintarou instantly rushed forward and at maximum speed began to strike a series of lightning-fast blows, from which Gawain was confused and barely had time to fight back. Felicia could not believe that a modern man could fight on equal terms with a glorious knight of the past era. But Kay corrected her rival and said that Rintarou was actually superior to Gawain and was getting stronger by the second. Lord Gawain could feel Rintarou's every punch getting faster and his opponent's overall speed exceeded his reaction time. Kay was shocked that Rintarou was evolving during the battle, because there was simply no way that could happen. Rintarou was thrilled with his abilities and decided that he needed to practice more often to regain his instincts and reflexes. The boy got a taste of battle and stunned Gawain. In the end, Rintarou was able to deliver a devastating blow that achieved its goal, and Gawain collapsed to the ground. Felicia was shocked by what had happened and lost confidence in her power. Still, Lord Gawain was not considered a strong knight for nothing. He still managed to overcome the pain and tried to get to his feet, stating to his mistress that he was fine. Though in doing so, Gawain felt his vulnerability. Rintarou at this point was savoring his success and feeling his incredible power. Kay was trying to figure out who exactly this mysterious guy was who was able to deal with Lord Gawain so deftly. Rintarou advised Kay to move farther away as it was too dangerous here. The guy promised to take care of the problem on his own. This made Kay very sad, as she felt completely useless. Lord Gawain, meanwhile, admitted that Mr. Rintarou was much stronger than him, and this sobered Felicia, who was still hoping for a successful conclusion to this battle. Gawain stated that when Mr. Rintarou becomes prideful, arrogant and conceited, there is nothing left of his manners and dignity. Therefore, it is unlikely that this person has friends, as he is like the nastiest, worst, and meanest character. Though at the same time Rintarou does not throw words to the wind and prefers to act. Though with Excalibur, Felicia still has to deal with him. Even if he were a king himself, a man from this era, no matter how much he trained, would not be able to cross swords with warriors from the Age of Legends. For example, if Lord Kay was born in this era, she would be able to earn the name of the greatest swordsman. Felicia still didn't understand where Rintarou got such strength from. The reasons for this were unknown, but to cross swords with a person who lived in the era of legends can only be another person like him, and thus Rintarou confirms his connection to the past era. Rintarou was getting tired of waiting for his opponents to get back into action and asked why they were deliberately trying to buy themselves time, since he was in a hurry to help Rune. The boy stated that if Lord Gawain was willing to run away, then he should do so. And if he still wanted to fight, then it should be done as quickly as possible. Felicia was puzzled and didn't know how to act at this moment. But Lord Gawain hastened his queen's decision, because it was impossible to wait. Lord Gawain explained to Felicia that they could not turn back, and therefore it was the right time to use the main ace up her sleeve. Felicia understood everything and decided to take a desperate step. Gawain recognized that Rintarou's incredible power had taken over him, and so he wanted to find out who he really was and what was hidden within him. But of course Rintarou was not going to give all the details and only smiled enigmatically. Gawain recognized that Rintarou's style of swordsmanship was different from anything he had encountered before. After all, it was not like the fighting style of the two swordsmen of the Round Table, Balin le Savage and the Paladin Galahad. Gawain demanded an explanation from Rintarou, but the lad replied that it made no sense. Eventually Gawain agreed, for he really didn't care. Gawain exclaimed that he didn't want to know anything about the man who would soon die and his memory would disappear from the pages of history forever. This self-righteous statement of Gawain's only caused Rintarou to laugh. The guy replied that it is impossible to kill him, and although they are indeed in the modern era, where Gawain having belonging to the Round Table has extra strength, but in fact his real strength as a member of the Round Table isn't too outstanding. Such words made even Kay, who highly appreciated Lord Gawain's abilities, indignant. The girl stated that she herself had seen Gawain display marvels of bravery and in many ways surpassed the other knights. But Rintarou reminded her that Arthur would be sure to cover that for Gawain. The illustrious knight declared that he was the embodiment of the sun and carried the ancient divine blood, and the patronage of the sun lived in his body. Lord Gawain stated that as long as the sun rises his power triples, and it is called that very patronage. Kay was shocked at this significant increase, but it had to be understood that Gawain would only be super strong until noon, for after that time the sun sets. King Arthur knew this, and for his adorable nephew, he always made sure that important battles were always fought before noon. Kay was outraged to learn such important information, for if this was the case, then she would be able to defeat Gawain without his extra strength. Rintarou still explained that even in his normal form, Lord Gawain was much stronger than Kay, and that made the girl saddened at all. But since the battles of King Arthur's legacy mostly take place at night, Gawain's pathetic ability won't see the sun. Therefore, Gawain still remains the third knight from the bottom. Gawain agreed that there was no point in hiding, and his strength among the Round Table members was indeed average or slightly above. Even so, he had always sought to rival Lord Lancelot and Lord Lamorak. Gawain explained that because of this, he had learned how to better utilize this ability. Gawain said that he had something to say to Rintarou, because despite his shortcomings, he was still a great knight. And as long as he is around Felicia, he feels like the strongest of the knights of the Round Table. Gawain promised to make Felicia a true king no matter what, for that is why he came here from Camelot Hill. Self-compulsion didn't help Gawain, and Rintarou easily blocked the new attack and then praised his opponent for a great pathos and useless speech. Rintarou advised Gawain to still realize that his strength is nothing in this battle. Rintarou promised to show his advantage that he could easily trample Gawain. Kay looked at Rintarou and decided that he was perfect for the role of a true villain. Gawain tried his best to restrain Rintarou, but it was very difficult. Rintarou enjoyed his advantage and offered the self-proclaimed best knight to show his strength. Kay was delighted and rejoiced at Rintarou's strength, which completely surpassed Gawain's capabilities. The girl was jubilant and shouted that now they would definitely win this battle. But suddenly Felicia decided to intervene in the battle and called upon her sword to reveal its true influence, to show the real authority of the king with its radiance. Rintarou was surprised at the display of the king's ways and ordered Kay to stop Felicia immediately. Rintarou knew that the king's path spell could summon the great power sleeping in Excalibur, and it was the king's most important trump card. Rintarou did not at all expect to use such a powerful force at the very beginning of the game. Meanwhile, Kay rushed towards Felicia, trying to interrupt the awakening of Excalibur's power. But the shining glory of Excalibur's steel literally blinded Kay, who decided that she had once again failed to be of any use. One day King Lot with 100 knights and King Caradoc together attacked Arthur. But the great and fearless Arthur turned to his blade for help. The great sword Excalibur let out a light equal to 30 torches, and at that moment the eyes of the attackers were blinded and they were killed by King Arthur's blows. Every king, soldier and knight trembled before this royal light, and then they realized that they had become rebels and tried to escape as quickly as possible. Rintarou's eyes were struck by an incredibly bright flash, and he missed Gawain's strongest punch. Rintarou had never felt such a heaviness in his body before. Felicia at this moment was jubilant at her success. The girl declared that the real name of this sword is the Shining Glory Steel Excalibur. This blade serves as a proof of the king's legitimacy and shows his authority. Being invited by the light of this sword, the bodies of opponents become heavy, and their strength is greatly limited. But Rintarou quickly got rid of the negative effects, and this amazed Felicia. The boy called all these legends a real nonsense. Lord Gawain, watching his opponent's movements again, prepared for battle. Rintarou explained that after his body became heavy, he simply waited for time to accelerate his magic power. And did Felicia really expect such a cheap trick to help her win this battle? Meanwhile, Kay felt incredibly heavy and couldn't get to her feet. Rintarou stated that trying to weaken him would have no effect, as this petty trick would not be able to compensate for the difference in strength. Felicia recognized that this magic glow was not as effective against equal opponents, and once King Lot did not escape but continued to fight. However, now Lord Gawain would fulfill the king's order and destroy the rebel Rintarou. Gawain rushed to fulfill the order, which only made Rintarou laugh. The boy called the knight a fool who could do nothing to him. But Gawain's rage, strengthened by the desire to fulfill the royal order, allowed the knight to strike a crushing blow that stunned Rintarou. The boy did not expect such a powerful blow and tried to quickly get to his feet. Gawain decided to build on his success and prepared to deliver the next blow. The first blow was followed by the next, and Rintarou could barely hold back the onslaught of the enraged knight. Kay still couldn't get up from the ground. She didn't understand why Rintarou had weakened so dramatically, as Gawain was showing wonders of swordsmanship. This time the initiative was completely on Lord Gawain's side, and it seemed that the knight was getting stronger with each new blow. Rintarou couldn't hold back such strong blows and lost his balance, flying far to the side. Fatigue and body trembling were tormenting Rintarou's body for the first time, and the guy did feel a strange heaviness. But it wasn't just that. Lord Gawain's own strength had increased many times over, and Rintarou realized that it was all thanks to Felicia. As it turned out, the sword Excalibur was affecting Gawain with its light just like the sunlight at sunrise, and it strengthened the knight. Gawain confirmed that as long as this magnificent blade was with him, he could always enjoy the patronage of the sun, and thus his power would be tripled. Gawain reminded that as long as he is with Felicia, he is the strongest knight of the Round Table. Felicia admitted that she didn't care at all what kind of knight Gawain had been before, because to her he was the best protector and follower who was on the right path with her. Kay, meanwhile, was desperate and realized that this confrontation had been lost before it had even begun. Felicia suggested to finally finish with Rintarou, because that way it would be possible to get rid of Rune and there would be one less competitor. After that, more time could be devoted to the battle for King Arthur's legacy. Felicia recognized that Rune had been a troubled child since she was a child and was difficult to deal with. Felicia stated that Rintarou couldn't win this battle, and he would realize it himself when he thought about it a bit. And Runa was an unsuitable vessel for the king from the beginning, for she always did only what suited her interests and benefits. And in the end, Runa took a suspicious guy to win, such as Runa does not fit the throne of King Arthur because she has neither ability nor strength. And if Runa leaves the battle for the king's legacy, it will be to her benefit. But first, we must finish business with Rintarou. Lord Gawain all decided to proceed cautiously, for they didn't fully know Rintarou's abilities. The lad remembered how he had promised Rune to be sure to do everything possible to help her, and so one must not betray her hope. Especially Rune believed her vassal and promised to wait for his help. Rintarou suddenly laughed, which caused his opponents to be perplexed. Gawain even thought that Rintarou might have gone mad from his blows. Rintarou said that it was all very amusing, because it was a wonderful feeling when nothing could be done by conventional means, and it was exactly the kind of entertainment he had been looking for a very long time. Rintarou explained that when you have cheater powers, you are constantly looking for entertainment to get rid of the boredom. And all of life is like a monotonous ride, where you constantly want to add something else. Rintarou exclaimed that he was having incredible fun right now and was very happy when he joined such an interesting battle. Felicia was angry at Rintarou's laughter and self-confidence, but Gawain told the queen not to worry, because now they were in an advantageous position and would definitely win. Rintarou was even more amused by his opponent's self-confidence and said that it was a good thing that Rune wasn't around. Gawain became wary at this point and prepared for any unexpected surprises. Rintarou declared that now he would fight at full strength and Gawain would regret today. The boy demonstrated a strange symbol on his hand and it startled Felicia. After a few seconds, Rintarou was surrounded by magical energy and that scared the opponents. Rintarou began to transform into something horrible and scared not only the enemies, but also Kay, who didn't expect to see her partner in such an ugly form. Lord Gawain immediately realized that he was a farmer, which meant that Rintarou possessed the bloodline of a farmer. Rintarou, smiling evilly, stated that now the silly talk was over and so it would all be over very soon. There are many types of gods in Irish myths and one such god is the Fomorists. Before they were defeated by the likes of the gods of Danann, the Fomorists themselves ruled the system through the power of darkness and became evil beings. Lord Gawain immediately felt the powerful pressure from Rintarou, but still hoped for help from his patronage of the sun. Suddenly, Lord Gawain made a very precise strike and chopped off Rintarou's head. Kay was shocked by what had happened, and the knight rejoiced at his victory. But everything turned out to be just an illusion and Rintarou was behind, and then gloatingly congratulated Gawain for such a success. Rintarou's magical power fell upon Gawain and the illustrious knight collapsed to the ground, not realizing what was happening to him. But at that moment Felicia came to his aid and used a magical floral dance of flame to try to stop Farmer. But Rintarou only laughed at such insolence and didn't care at all about the flames that surrounded him. After a few seconds, the full effect of Felicia's spell was dispelled and the stunned girl decided that Rintarou had used the dark magic of black flames. All of this was a manifestation of the dark silhouette magic that the powerful farmers possessed. Of the many types of magic, there are those abilities that are inherent to fantastic beings. They're called bloodline magic. Controlling the great forces of nature and the world is called elven magic. Controlling the forces of darkness, curses, and destruction is the dark magic of the farmers. And controlling the forces of light, blessing, and regeneration belongs to the light magic of the Danann. Since the blood and soul of fantastic beings is used as a catalyst when using bloodline magic, naturally no one can use it except those whose bloodline has them in it. And if Rintarou can use dark magic, that power is Farmer's transformation. Rintarou stated that he could indeed temporarily revert back to his ancestors' form. Felicia only now realized that the opponent was indeed Farmer. The girl realized that if that was the case, they would not be able to defeat Rintarou. The guy, however, claimed a crushing victory that would end Felicia's desire to ascend to the throne of King Arthur. And now she must rethink her words about Rune. Rintarou explained that Felicia harbors a sincere hatred for Rune, but an opponent's abilities are not something that can be measured by conventional methods, and that requires a test. Rintarou said that the great King Arthur had been different from the beginning, and then thought that he had been too serious lately, for he too had thought that Rune was not fit to rule at all. Felicia was horrified at the sight of the monster that was gradually approaching. Lord Gawain advised his queen to retreat immediately, for unfortunately his patronage of the sun was nothing before the power of dark magic and they had no chance of victory. But before escaping, Felicia declared that Rintarou should remember that they would never back down or stop in front of their goal, and would find a way to destroy him. A few seconds later, the transformation of the other world was lifted, and after Felicia and Gawain disappeared, all the students enslaved by the spell regained consciousness and felt a headache. No one understood what had happened to them or why they were all lying on the ground. After all, they were only trying to catch Rune. Tsugumi, like the others, was puzzled by what had happened and decided to continue chasing after Rune. Meanwhile, Rintarou regretted that he hadn't been able to get a final victory over his opponent, and remembered how long it had been since he had been called a monster, since he didn't often reincarnate as his ancestor. Kay marveled at Rintarou's display of strength and thanked the guy for saving her in this difficult battle. After a few seconds, Rintarou reincarnated back into his usual form and asked Kay not to tell Rune about what had happened here. Rintarou explained that he had long since gotten used to the fact that ordinary people were afraid of him. But if Runa found out about it, they would have misunderstandings during the battle in the future. But as it turned out, Rune was already nearby and saw the guy and his other guys. The girl asked what this incredible power that Rintarou possessed was. Runa demanded an immediate explanation of what exactly Rintarou was. The lad immediately recalled those unpleasant moments when ordinary people called him a monster, and it caused him to dislike his true nature. Rune kept pushing for an explanation and stated that Rintarou's power looked very sinister. The guy realized that his true appearance certainly caused unpleasant emotions in the girl, and now we can forget about the joint continuation of adventures. But suddenly Rune was happy and called Rintarou's power incredibly useful. The boy did not expect such emotions from the girl and now did not know what to say in response. Rune was indeed delighted at how quickly Rintarou had transformed into another form. She was also very impressed with the strange clothes and beautiful patterns, in addition to the incredible physical enhancement. Rune asked him to tell her more about this magical power, because she wanted to learn how to use it too. Rintarou realized that all his worries were in vain, so he asked Rune to immediately calm down and not to get so close to her, because her persistence was too frightening. Rintarou finally explained that it was just a transformation into Falmer, and that only he had that ability, because dark magic could only be used by those who were related to ancient beings. Rune was instantly upset, for she couldn't do something like that. Rintarou was surprised by the girl's reaction, for she was not at all frightened by his sinister appearance. The guy explained that in any case, such a transformation is not normal, and having such power he can fully call himself a man. Runa thought about it, for indeed Rintarou was a strange unknown monster that should definitely be feared and avoided. But even so, she doesn't want to do that. After all, he is only Rintarou, her loyal vassal. So there is no one more reliable than a strong vassal, and in this way she can make Rintarou obey her will, and this shows her true character of a true king. The girl continues to rejoice, stating that the day when she will take the throne of King Arthur is fast approaching, and it will be a great event. Rintarou realized that this beautiful girl really hadn't killed a single apprentice, and despite the hardships, she had made her way here, putting her body on the line. Rintarou then grabbed Rune's neck tightly and asked him to be quiet for a while, because he needed to concentrate. After a few seconds, all the bruises and abrasions on the beautiful girl's body disappeared, and she felt the pain no longer bothering her. Rintarou explained that light healing magic would have handled the problem much better, but unfortunately he was only connected to dark magic. The guy then suggested to call it a day and stated that in the beginning they were only trying to steal exam questions, but in the end he had to show his main trump card, and now it would be good to rest and think about what happened. Kay apologized for her powerlessness during the battle, because if it wasn't for Rintarou's magical abilities, it was unlikely she would have been able to survive. Kay admitted that despite everything she still shaved Rintarou, but now she was beginning to understand him little by little. After all, everything she's seen proves his dedication to the common cause of Rune. Kay explained that she was very much looking forward to Rintarou's help in the future, for his great power should help Rune become a true king. Rintarou only laughed in response and asked the girl if she really wanted to dump all her worries on him, because there was work for her too. Rintarou said that just a simple apology would be enough for him, because Kay had a right to be suspicious of him. The girl realized her mistakes and decided that in the future they should support each other to achieve the main goal. Then all the team members started arguing and laughing, talking about how exactly the battle had happened. Kay didn't want to remember the moment when she was lying on the ground, but Rintarou was certainly not without jokes about it. Meanwhile, Felicia was furious at her defeat and couldn't accept her powerlessness. The girl could not understand why Rintarou was in another world, because Rune was only supposed to fall into her trap, and now she had to think of something new. Just at that moment, Lord Gloria came out and said that he was very disappointed with the outcome of this battle, and Felicia should have tried much better. Lord Gawain was hit hard by Gloria, who stated that he was very upset and does not accept Felicia's defeat. Although Felicia did do a great job to learn Rintarou's secrets and it will help in the future battle, Gloria stated that Rintarou is not really his enemy and such a thing is simply out of the question. Felicia didn't understand what was going on and reminded of the alliance made earlier. But Lord Gloria replied that he didn't need the girl anymore, because her value lies only in her ancient elven blood and magical abilities. And now he finally finished preparing a magic rite to take these powers from Felicia. The girl realized that the original plan and was only to steal her magical abilities, and this perfidy was unimaginable. Meanwhile, Gloria prepared to summon the 12th Knight of the Round Table. Rintarou meanwhile recalled a dream he had often had. In this dream, a little boy was faithfully serving a king named Arthur. This dream repeated itself throughout his life and was so real that it seemed like a memory. Eventually, Rintarou did realize that these were real memories from a past life that manifested at the dictates of the soul. In this dream, Rintarou could sword fight, use magic, and study any subject. In this dream, one could do anything without looking at any obstacles. Rintarou didn't know the reasons for everything that was happening, but his current self was able to inherit the abilities and memories of his past life. Rintarou felt always lonely, and for him a man born with incredible abilities in this world was endlessly boring, and there was nothing worthwhile. That's why Rintarou decided to take the advice of a certain girl and join this battle for King Arthur's legacy. When Rintarou joined Team Rune, he didn't have any high principles or goals and just wanted to have fun. His past life was filled with colorful and interesting events, so he wanted to repeat everything in modern times. Even though Rintarou was feared and despised in his past life for his terrifying power, he liked this life because it was full of events. Rintarou wondered what kind of answer he was looking for by participating in the battle for King Arthur's legacy. He remembered a moment from the past, when a small and foolish girl had promised to make him her vassal. Suddenly, the boy felt the strongest blow on his head, and Rune demanded to stop dangling in the clouds, because the queen was next to him. The huge crowd of students demanded all sorts of delicious rolls and buns. The assortment of the student store was huge, and Runa demanded Rintarou to speed up. The girl explained that it was necessary to pull himself together. After all, this lunchtime rush of students is the basis for their business, and Rintarou must take responsibility for his role as a sales consultant. Runa has instructed him not to shy away from this job and to serve the customers. After all, one must sell whatever they can while they are in this business. It is simply necessary to take away the money of impressionable village students who are happy to buy anything. Rintarou is tired of the noisy environment, because most of the students didn't come to this store just for the delicious sweets, but only to look at Kay's seductive bust. While shopping for various foods, students could get special cards with a picture of Kay in a swimsuit or other intriguing clothing. At lunchtime, crowds of students gathered just to get new cards and enjoy the seductive look of the girl. The excitement was huge, and students were ready to buy up all the merchandise just to get the seductive cards with Kay. Runa was thrilled with her wonderful idea of handing out the cards with Lord Kay along with the baked goods. Rintarou was surprised that Runa was so devious. After all, she was using the Knight of the Round Table for profit. Also, the guy couldn't understand why Runa was so fixated on making money. After all, she was supposed to receive a huge amount of money after selling her Excalibur. Teacher Cujo praised Rintarou for his excellent work at the student store, as he had really hit it off with Runa and they had organized a great team together. Rintarou apologized and explained that he shouldn't have interfered in Runa's business after all. Teacher Cujo smiled in response and said that he had added another problem child to the school, but as long as he was around Rune, he should be fine. Cujo then explained that he had gotten references from his superiors and learned that Rintarou was very famous in the education field. Therefore, he is not going to lecture or give advice about education and behavior in this school, because Rintarou should be well versed in it himself and aware of the consequences of his actions. Cujo confessed that he really believes that Rintarou should be together with Rune, for it will definitely benefit him. The teacher then asked to sell him a bun and a cream roll. Obviously, he too is a clear fan of Kay's cards. Rintarou was surprised by the teacher's words and didn't understand why Cujo was so strongly advising to be together with Rune. But the teacher reminded him that only time would set things straight. Just at that moment, Kinumi appeared and accused her rival of immoral disturbances that were ruining the school's image and demanded that all this nonsense stop immediately. Tsugumi was outraged at the sale of obscene cards in the school, and the mass distribution of products that disrupted the learning processes and distracted the students. Runa reminded her that all of her actions did not fit under the jurisdiction of the student council. After all, she was just selling lunch bread with only the occasional interesting card. Tsugumi shouted that no matter how Rune tries to make it look, it's not allowed, because she's specifically selling baked goods to distribute cards and she shouldn't get away with this kind of thing. Especially if someone manages to collect all the cards, they will get a very rare card that shows a naked K taking a bath. That's definitely a gacha and an obvious crime. Tsugumi declared that she couldn't take it anymore and urged her followers to immediately remove this indecent card and baking stand. But as it turned out, most of the students were against this and immediately started accusing the Disciplinary Committee of infringing on their rights, and vowed to protect Runa's booth. After a few minutes, the students got into a real scuffle trying to figure out who was right. Rintarou was once again convinced that all was not well with this school. Runa decided to get the hell out and put Kei in charge of what was going on, then pulled Rintarou along with her. The girl stated that they needed to get out of town immediately until things calmed down, and the next thing they knew, they were jumping out of the 3rd floor and onto a busy street. Rintarou was angry because Rune could have killed him and proved his inadequacy once again. But the girl only laughed and told him not to worry about such trifles, because she was the king and knew better. On top of that, they were skipping classes, and Rintarou didn't want to draw attention to himself, especially since they could be followed by opponents. Rune reminded her of the previous night, and advised her to follow the rule that says guys don't complain, especially since Rintarou is her vassal and must follow his master everywhere. Rintarou advised him to change the subject and reminded him that the battle for King Arthur's throne usually starts at sunset. In other words, they still didn't need to relax throughout the day, though they shouldn't expect an attack before sunset. Rintarou still felt that since they were hunting for King Arthur's throne, they couldn't waste a moment and Rune should know what they were talking about. Suddenly the girl suggested going on a date, and that made Rintarou smile. But the boy still decided to start by gathering information about the other kings claiming Arthur's legacy. Rintarou started breaking Rune's hair, calling her an empty-headed queen, because how could she even come up with a proposal for a date together? The boy continued to be indignant, but Rune stated that he didn't understand anything and had no idea why they should go on a date. Runa advised to listen to her very carefully, because officially for everyone they should start dating immediately, and make it as believable as possible. Rintarou didn't understand why they should pay attention to other people's opinions at all, especially since they had only recently met, and couldn't know each other well. But Rune reminded him again that they had a terrible battle to fight to the death with the other kings and jacks, so they needed to be together as often as possible. Rintarou still praised the girl for such an interesting idea. Rune explained that to cooperate together in a dangerous battle and indispensable strong bonds of trust between a king and his vassal. That's why they should go out and get to know each other as well as possible, especially in a pleasant and peaceful environment. Rune said that she, as a true king, would help Rintarou relax and learn as much as possible about her. But the guy admitted that he was actually very bored with her and was getting tired of this kind of communication. But Runa was not going to give up and offered to arrange a date immediately. Rintarou was shocked by such insistence and realized that since the girl was pulling him by the hand, then he definitely fell into a trap. Rune promised Rintarou to teach him the ins and outs of socializing during a date, since he had never dated a girl before. And when a guy asks a girl out on a date, then they should definitely go to the arcade. But Rintarou doubted Rune's knowledge, since it wasn't much like a classic date. Rune then ordered the vassal to immediately transfer the money into gaming tokens and take it as a royal decree. Rintarou was shocked by the behavior of his companion, who was really obsessed with various games. Rune tried to play anything and really enjoyed the process completely without considering the money spent. Judging by her excellent playing skills, it was not the first time Runa visited this noisy establishment and even managed to win various prizes. The most pleasant was a joint lunch with eating sweets and ice cream. After that, the young couple went to the embankment and Runa continued to talk enthusiastically about her gambling successes. Rintarou unexpectedly enjoyed the girl's beautiful mood and briefly forgot about all the problems. As a result, they had managed to spend the entire day doing nothing and were now enjoying the sunset. Rune asked if Rintarou was having fun with her. The boy admitted that he really hadn't felt so light in a very long time. But then Runa reminded him that a vassal should fulfill the needs of his king and be grateful for the opportunity. Rintarou did not argue with the girl at this point, for he really enjoyed being around her. The past day had been filled with emotions that he had not experienced in his entire life. Rune asked the boy why he had come to this school in the first place and decided to join the battle of King Arthur's legacy. Rune wanted to know the real reason, because maybe Rintarou just wanted to meet someone, or had made a promise to someone to participate in this battle. Rintarou explained that it wasn't really that complicated and he just wanted to have fun, because the ordinary world had become boring and uninteresting for him. Such an explanation didn't impress the girl too much. Rintarou then inquired about Rune's motives, and as it turned out, there was someone she was bound to make her vassal. Rune asked the boy if he knew what the true purpose of the battle for King Arthur's legacy was. Rintarou explained that he had scrutinized the matter and it all had to do with a terrible catastrophe. One day the three goddesses of fate foretold an old terrible event during which the old gods and fairies would be reborn together possessing great power. After that, the world will return to the time of myths and everything will change. And after that, the successor of King Arthur will get the right to conquer the world, as well as the task to resist a huge catastrophe. In other words, the battle for the throne of King Arthur is a contest to choose the savior who will prevent this terrible catastrophe. And the power to control the entire world as a gift is just a trivial bait. Rune explained that since she has King Arthur's blood in her, she has had every possible training since she was a child to be ready for this fight. But when she learned of the impending disaster, she became very afraid, for it was a huge responsibility. Runa didn't want anything to do with the battle for the king's legacy, or the fight to stop the catastrophe. She didn't understand why she would even want to do something so terrible. But in those long ago times, there was one child who used to say the right words to her. The little boy advised her not to worry and promised to become her vassal if Runa could succeed and become the strongest king in the world. The boy promised to destroy any obstacles and become a loyal vassal in the service of the true ruler of this world. Runa explained that she had only spent one summer with this child, but that time spent together had saved her and given her motivation. The promise of the little boy to become her loyal vassal had inspired Rune so much that she really wanted to become the greatest king in this world and began to try to train and learn various sciences. Since then, the girl has become concerned with many more things and now she wants to fight to protect this world. But all this of course looks very strange and stupid, because to decide to become the king of this world only because of the request of some child seems incredible. Rintarou wished the girl to find that strange child who wanted so much to become a vassal for her. But whoever it was, this kid was most likely a real idiot, and he wished he could meet him in person. Rune smilingly asked where this mysterious boy, who should be quite a grown man by now, was missing now. The boy asked what was going on with Runa, but the girl offered a guess, adding intrigue to their conversation. Just then, a huge flock of birds flew up, as if it had been startled by some wild animal. Rintarou explained that he could sense a faint aura emanating from the nearby trees, and so they needed to be careful. Rintarou advised them to call Kay, as someone might have set traps nearby. But the girl was keen on exploring this grove, for it was another adventure with her vassal. Kay was disgusted by Mrs. Rune's date with the most disgusting guy in the world, because in her opinion it was outrageous for the queen. Kay decided that Rintarou was a very cunning and devious man who would take advantage of Rune's weakness and then possess her supple and young body. In doing so, he would also feed on her emotions and deceive her in her heart, and then throw her away like trash afterward, only to leave with another girl. After a short walk, Lord Gawain suddenly appeared ahead of everyone. There were terrible wounds on the body of the illustrious knight, and Runa immediately inquired where Felicia was now. This meeting also came as a surprise to Gawain, who was losing strength every minute. The knight recalled that Felicia was a longtime friend of Rune's, and so he wanted to ask for her help. Just at that moment, Master Cujo came out of the bushes and said that while he was looking for Rune to retrieve Excalibur, and the shard of the round table that she had taken away, he had come across a lot of small fish on his way. Rune was shocked to see a friendly teacher with a weapon in his hands in this forest. Cujo smiled as usual and stated that he thought his students were just skipping class. Cujo admitted that he didn't expect to meet his students in this forest. Kay asked if Cujo's teacher was also a royal pretender to Arthur's throne. Rintarou confirmed his speculation. When he gave the change to his teacher in the morning, he noticed how practiced his swordsman's hand was. After all, only a man skilled with a sword would have such strong hands. Cujo continued to smile and praised the boy for his insight. The teacher stated that his real name was Salma Gloria Cujo, and he was the heir to the Cujo Corporation. which had adopted the Gloria family who had inherited the blood of King Arthur. Cujo spoke of how he joined the battle for King Arthur's legacy as one of the challenger kings. Rintarou realized that he had a true monster in front of him, and perhaps Cujo Gloria had incredible powers hidden within him. Runa asked for an explanation of what Cujo had done to Felicia. The polite teacher explained that he knew of the girl's friendship that had lasted since childhood, and could promise that at the moment Felicia was still alive. But then Cujo promised to kill Felicia very soon, for she should be a great source of magical energy for him. But there was no need to pay much attention to that, because everyone here would also die, and so none of this mattered anymore. Cujo then took out a shard of Round Table number 12. The mysterious teacher summoned the 12th Knight of the Round Table to his aid, and it caused Rintarou to feel uncomfortable. A few seconds later, the dark-haired knight appeared, which caused Kay to be surprised and afraid. Rintarou gradually began to realize how much power teacher Cujo possessed. The famous knight Lancelot looked very angry and proved with his whole appearance the nickname of the strongest warrior, and a true monster of the Round Table. Lord Gawain said that they finally met the cowardly traitor Lancelot. The 12th Knight himself declared that it was a great mistake for King Arthur to get the Round Table with the help of a bunch of lowly knights. Lancelot promised to correct this mistake with his sword, for now that he had joined this great battle, he would kill all the mediocre knights of the Round Table and prove his incredible strength. Lancelot explained that Lord Cujo was his true master, whose orders he was willing to obey strictly. Lancelot asked to order him to kill all knights and destroy all enemies, and he would instantly wipe out all lying kings and knights. Kay was shocked by Lancelot's behavior, for in the past he had been full of love and kindness and adored the way of chivalry and nobility. Lord Gawain admitted that it was his fault that Sir Lancelot had changed so much. Master Cujo granted his loyal knight's wish and ordered Lancelot to destroy everyone immediately. The illustrious knight instantly turned into a monster wanting only to kill. Lord Gawain was the first to be struck, and his desperate cry echoed throughout the forest. Rintarou also used his special ability and transformed into a monster to try to hold back Lancelot's blows and protect Rune. But Lancelot's power was so strong that Rintarou couldn't hold back his blows and flew far away. Cujo was delighted at his vassal's ability, for Lancelot was indeed the strongest knight of the Round Table. The terrible monster then turned his attention to the defenseless Rune. Cujo was confident of his ultimate victory, but Runa stated it really wasn't that easy to destroy Rintarou. The boy had already managed to get back up, and at that moment found himself in a tree. The frustrated teacher realized that Rintarou had merely applied his shadow silhouette, and was able to cut them off from the reality of this world and used another world's transformation at an opportune moment. Rintarou praised the teacher for his insight and explained that as long as the enemies were lost in this world, then everyone would have time to take their time to leave this place and get to safety. Rintarou was glad that he had very interesting people around him who had incredible power, and now he would have a lot of fun fighting. So he would have the last word, and Cujo would regret his perfidy. But Cujo only laughed back and praised the boy for his self-confidence, though Runa must accept her doom, for she is a real nothing compared to him. Her good friend and rival Felicia's life will end at midnight tonight, and no one can change that. Cujo explained that if Runa really cared about her friend's life, she would have to go to the top floor of the Central Park International Hotel and try to change her fate. Soon all of Rune's team was at the huge building where Felicia was supposed to be. Quickly rising with the help of the elevator to the top of the building, everyone was surprised, because they found themselves in a deserted area, which was a magical illusion. It was all part of Teacher Cujo's cunning plan to shackle Felicia to a huge cross. All of this was created using the transformation magic of another world. Felicia wasn't at all surprised by Rune's appearance, though she didn't want to involve her old friend in these problems. Cujo was just about to destroy the soul of his prisoner in order to take away her mighty power, but she would die soon anyway. After all, even in the event of her death, Felicia would fulfill her fondest wish, for her powers would serve the one true king. Rune promised not to let that happen and headed forward. Cujo, meanwhile, was surprised, for he had not seen Rintarou with the team. Rintarou probably couldn't have followed Rune into such a reckless battle, and they must have parted for good without finding common ground. Cujo called the girl a pathetic king who couldn't even command a single vassal. This enraged Rune, and she rushed to attack. Not long before, Rintarou had argued with Rune about the foolishness of attacking Cujo head-on, for then they would have no chance of winning. But the girl claimed that she wanted to save her friend. Gawain was desperate, but still reminded that Felicia considered Rune her enemy. Gawain then revealed that Felicia had joined the battle to find a way to defeat Cujo, and she didn't want to get anyone else involved in the trouble. That was why she was trying to get Rune to lose as quickly as possible and get out of the battle. But Rune still wanted to help her beloved friend. After all, she must take care of her no matter what. Rintarou immediately recalled a memory from the past where he had heard a similar phrase before. Rintarou asked, "Does the girl really want to know what happens when she takes care of everyone and when she continues to believe in someone and lend a helping hand?" King Arthur loved everyone no matter who they were, and despite the fact that he had warned him over and over again of the danger, King Arthur continued to fight to protect everyone, and in the end this great king fought not against his enemies but against those he loved. Many other kings and kin as well as Lancelot and the rest of the knights became his adversaries, and only he predicted that all these people would cause the fall of the Round Table. But Arthur did not believe in these words and only laughed. In the end, King Arthur never grew up and remained a young child. That being said, Rintarou was most angry because he believed the king and didn't stop him from making mistakes. In the end, he was unable to stay by Arthur's side until the end and was deceived by the Lordess of the Lake. After that he was sealed in stone. He only had to silently watch as Arthur, the Round Table and all the kingdoms were destroyed. All of this was unbearable torment, because there was no way to influence the situation. That was why Runa should grow up and not repeat Arthur's mistakes. The girl replied that this world is really very strange and she had a vague idea of how things should be right. Runa only now realized that Rintarou was actually Merlin, a demon half morph and half human. Merlin is the oldest powerful wizard, as well as a warrior unrivaled. This man wandered with Balin, with Kay, with Lord Bedivere and Lucan. Merlin always supported King Arthur and was his greatest advisor. However, eventually tragedy struck and the Lordess of the Lake sealed Merlin's powers inside a rock. As a result, Merlin disappeared from the legends of King Arthur's reign. Rintarou explained that this is what his past life was like and he has almost all of his memories of wandering in Merlin's body. However, these memories feel like someone else's and he can watch them catchingly from the sidelines. Rintarou advised him to forget about Felicia, and then she could survive and truly become the greatest king. But the girl did not give up her idea to save her friend even though she was in personal danger. Rintarou realized that Rune was just as stupid and naive as King Arthur, and so it was hard to understand how anyone could serve under this stubborn king. Rintarou recalled how everything was ruined and King Arthur was defeated in the end. But Rune didn't want to hear anything and ordered her vassal to give his life for her. The girl explained that as long as Rintarou is with her, she feels completely free to do whatever she wants. That's why she wants Rintarou to stay with her. Rintarou didn't want to join a suicide mission at all, especially because Rune kept ignoring his advice. After all, she must realize that she would absolutely lose and die in this battle. Rintarou declares that from this moment on, he renounces Rune as his king. So from this moment on, their paths diverge and he can only wish well to his former queen, who is destined to die very soon. Lancelot was furious and displayed all his incredible abilities to instantly destroy the three opponents. It was incredibly difficult to contain the strength and power of the glorified knight, and none of the three were capable of an equal fight with Lancelot. Cujo continued to laugh merrily and then asked if they were all willing to immediately surrender and accept their fate of being losers. Meanwhile, Rintarou continued to think about what had happened and sitting at an empty bus stop felt how bored he was. It was hard to admit that his battles for King Arthur's succession were already over and it had happened at the most interesting moment. Rintarou decided that tomorrow he would have to look for a new king, though he couldn't stop thinking about Rune. Rintarou didn't understand what was happening to him and why he had suddenly become so sentimental and attached to this stupid girl. Rintarou realized that he had chosen Runa because she was the hardest to defeat, and that made the battle even more interesting and exciting. But even despite all their disagreements, Runa was the first person who didn't treat him like a monster. After all, this girl made him fulfill her whims from start to finish and acquaintance. The guy tormented himself in doubt, remembered his one principle that made him make his boring life a little more fun. Rintarou realized that he had made a mistake, because now he should be by his queen's side and help her despite the danger. Suddenly he noticed a newspaper lying on the ground with an advertisement for the sale of the school. Rintarou immediately realized that Runa wanted to get rich so badly and had sold her unique sword just to buy back the school and keep it for the students. Then the guy remembered how in his distant childhood he had watched with interest a little girl, who despite her stupidity seemed very noble to him. The little girl was undergoing special training as a knight in those days and was supposed to eventually save the world from disaster. But she could not bear such a load of responsibility and constantly trembled and cried when left alone. Then at some point she met a little boy who gave her hope and confidence in her abilities. The boy only wanted to play, because he was always bored and wanted to have fun. The boy promised at that moment that when Runa became king he would be her loyal vassal. and so the girl must try her best to achieve this goal. Runa promised that day to stop crying and strive for the status of a great king so that Rintarou would become a close vassal to her. Kay was startled and asked if Runa was alright. The girl continued to stare intently at her opponent and replied that she was fine. But Cujo was completely confident in his superiority and suggested that Runa finally realized how big the difference between them was. After all, their strength could not stand up to Lancelot's might. The evil teacher offered to bow down to him and beg for mercy, crouching and licking his shoes. And if Rune would humbly and sincerely apologize for her shamelessness, perhaps he would use her as his servant. But that only made Rune laugh, who praised her rival for having a wonderful fantasy that would never come true. Cujo was surprised at his rival's determination, for she had no chance of winning in this situation, so it was foolish to raise her sword again and try to fight. But the girl declared that she would never give up even in the face of death, for she was the true king. Cujo instantly replaced his smile with a mask of anger and stated that he still made a mistake when he kept Rune alive, for he wanted to use her as a negotiation card with Rintarou. But now he is ready to correct his mistake and introduce Rune to the tip of his blade, the steel sword of military conquest. It is the most fitting sword for a king who stands at the pinnacle of all things, and it is a manifestation of King Arthur's supreme rule as the invader who defeated the monolithic Roman Empire. Cujo stated that the power of his blade is that it will be able to unleash a force superior to the strongest among those involved in the battle. Therefore, no one could ever defeat him, much less a foolish girl who thought she was king. Cujo recognized that unfortunately he would probably not have the opportunity to show his great ability in the battle for King Arthur's legacy, for there was no one who could match him in strength. Everyone was terrified of the danger coming from the mad Cujo. Felicia began to ask not to touch Rune, for she was innocent, and there was no point in killing her. But this only amused Cujo, who was enjoying his power and impunity, because in his opinion this was the most important privilege for a great king. Runa at this point felt unusual and almost resigned to the fact that there is already have to die in this battle. The only consolation was that she truly felt she was a king until the very end, and was willing to die for her beliefs. But at that moment, the ceiling above the mad teacher's head began to crack. Rintarou appeared spectacularly through the resulting breach and completely disrupted the plans of the overconfident Cujo. Rintarou immediately attacked Cujo, trying to protect his queen. The mad teacher did not expect such a lightning-fast appearance of Rintarou, because he felt like a winner and the owner of King Arthur's throne. Everyone was also surprised to see Rintarou holding the sword Excalibur, which had been sold to Rune. Rintarou stated that he was really surprised when he found out that Runa had sold his magic sword in order to save the school, and so it took some time to find that sword and return it. But now Runa must never let it out of her hands again. Rintarou noticed how much this girl looked like the King Arthur he had known in the past. The girl remembered her loyal vassal's words that they had no chance of victory if they attacked Lancelot head-on. Meanwhile, the evil monster Lancelot was ready to destroy everyone in his path. Rintarou was frustrated that he hadn't thought of any interesting plan before rushing into this battle. Meanwhile, Rune, feeling powerful, decided to announce the real name of her Excalibur. The girl shouted that it was very difficult to control the power of the Excalibur alone, but now she was sure that with Rintarou by her side, it would work. So she entrusts her life to her vassal, and he must return the favor. Rintarou didn't want to report the truth, but in fact Excalibur Rune was completely useless at the moment, and in order to activate its mighty power one strict rule must be followed. Trust was the main catalyst for activating this power, and Rintarou declared that he fully trusted his life to the true Rune King. Cujo meanwhile tried to figure out what exactly his opponents were up to and eventually decided that it was the perfect time to use his royal ways. But Rintarou was in no hurry to do so, for now the initiative had passed to them. Rintarou reincarnated again into his ancient ancestor and began to furiously attack Lancelot. The guy declared that it is time for the final battle, in which the true king will be revealed. But in fact Rintarou was not sure that he could fight for a long time against Lancelot, and he only needed to hold out until the moment when Rune announced the true name of his blade. But that's when Lord Gawain came to the rescue and increased the pressure on Lancelot. Not left aside, and the beautiful Kay, who decided to join the attack and take revenge on Lancelot for all the offenses. Just at that moment a bright light shone and Rintarou realized that it was the magnificent recovery magic of Felicia, who also decided to help in the battle against Lancelot. Felicia shouted that they would all take care of Lancelot and Rintarou should try to defeat the cursed Cujo. But Lancelot, even despite the numerical superiority of his opponents, felt no fear at all and continued to attack everyone around him. Rintarou realized that his friends would not be able to resist Lancelot for long, and he had to hurry and destroy the vile teacher, but at the same time could not lose vigilance. Cujo was ready for battle and skillfully wielded the steel sword of military conquest, activating his magical abilities. Rintarou was shocked at the strength he was facing, but still realized that there was no retreat. Cujo rejoiced in his superiority and declared that no matter how strong Rintarou was, he would not be able to defeat him, for that was the nature of his majestic blade. Each strike of the teacher was accompanied by a powerful explosion that threw Rintarou off and caused him terrible pain. Rintarou was shocked at his opponent's abilities and tried to figure out exactly how to fight him. Rintarou thought that maybe he should leave this place. It would be suicide to fight such an opponent. But that couldn't be done, because then Runa would definitely die. But then Rintarou remembered his real goal and decided that even though he was in danger, he should have fun and enjoy this battle. But another attack was futile, and it was becoming obvious that fighting a monster like Cujo was futile. Meanwhile, the three friends were fighting against Lancelot and were also in a very difficult situation. Rune was trying to concentrate as much as possible, because she realized that everyone was fighting hard and maybe some of them would lose their lives. But she couldn't help them until she activated Excalibur. But then something began to happen, and suddenly the overconfident Cujo felt afraid of Rune. This came as a surprise to the teacher, for he had never felt anything like this before. The great panic seized Cujo and he began to call out to Lancelot, demanding that he kill Rune immediately. In the meantime, his friends tried their best to stop Lancelot from breaking through to Runa. Cujo realized that his plan was crumbling like a glass figure, for his loyal Lancelot was blocked. Rintarou sensed an opportune moment and told his teacher it was time to pay his bills, for he owed his students. Rintarou said that Cujo was not really worthy of being king and that he had better get rid of his ambitions. Just at that moment, Excalibur rune began to activate, and Cujo's sword stopped working and could no longer absorb the power of others. Rintarou realized that the strength of Cujo's blade depended on the strength of his opponent. But it depends on the opponent he is facing, not on the strength of his opponent's sword. And that was the fatal mistake of the foolish teacher who thought he was the true king. At that moment, a bright flash flashed from Rune's activated Excalibur. The girl exclaimed, declaring her way as king. Cujo realized that in the girl's hands was the steel sword of companionship. Once during the time of taming the giant Mitchell, King Arthur entrusted the front line to his knight so that he could regain his breath. Then King Arthur slew the giant with a single swing of his blade. This sword is a symbol showing the bond of trust between king and vassals. The power of this sword is quite simple. It blinds the eyes and leaves her vulnerable to the enemy, remaining defenseless for a certain amount of time. But afterward, the wielder of the sword can unleash tremendous power. But it is impossible to do such a thing alone, as the king withdraws from the battle for the duration of the activation, and it truly renders the sword useless. Rintarou realized that he was wrong too, because he really thought the sword was useless. But as it turned out in Rune's hands, it might be the strongest sword in existence. Rune felt incredibly strong and confident and began to use his magnificent Excalibur. The colossal power stunned Cujo, and he could not believe his defeat, for he believed he was destined to become the ruler of this world. In a few minutes it was over, and the sun was rising far above the horizon. Rintarou advised him to get off that roof, for such destruction would not go unnoticed. Rune thanked her loyal vassal for coming back to her at the most critical moment and saving her from death. After all, if he hadn't brought the sword, defeat would have been imminent. Therefore, he is the best vassal one could ever dream of. Rintarou immediately remembered the exact same words being said to him by the great King Arthur. Rintarou admitted that now he partially understood why he had served King Arthur in the past and tried to be his loyal companion, though he still stuck to his opinion that Runa was too frivolous and naive for a king. The girl was indignant and asked if Rintarou remembered anything, because usually at such a moment people remember something good, and in general he should show tact and respect to his king. But the boy only laughed and replied that he had no idea what Runa was telling him. Kay advised not to be so relaxed, because Mr. Cujo's whereabouts were unknown, since after the destruction of the other world he had disappeared without leaving a trace. But Runa stated that we can forget about Professor Cujo now, as he is out of this competition for good. Rintarou suggested that with this sudden turn of events, the Lordess of the Lake must be at a loss right now. Kay exclaimed that although they had managed to defeat Cujo-san, Runa still shouldn't let this victory go to her head and needed to remain cool and cautious. Felicia supported Kay, because people like Runa had been quick to let their guard down and think they were invincible since time immemorial. So now Rune should concentrate and not think that all problems were over. But suddenly Rintarou grabbed Felicia and Lord Gawain's heads and asked why they were acting like they were part of their team. but Rune explained that she had actually made an alliance with Felicia. Lord Gawain stated that even though they were now allies, he would not allow anyone to touch his mistress, and would be sure to take revenge on Rintarou if he allowed himself to do such a thing again. Then it all turned into a joke, and Rintarou admitted that he absolutely did not want to be killed by Lord Gawain's hands. Rune asked everyone to calm down and promised that everything would be fine now that they were all together. And that means that ahead of them await incredible adventures and difficult battles for the sake of obtaining the legacy of King Arthur.